everyone. Welcome to the 21st episode of the Social Good podcast. Today we have with us Ashley Werhun. She is the co founder and CEO of Mentorly. So glad to have you with us today, Ashley.
Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Sure. So, yeah, how's it going over in you're in Canada?
Yeah, it's good. The snow is melting. It's a little spring, so that we're always grateful for that. We had like a record winter of snow, so it's what we call it's like the Montreal thaw. So people are running, they're outside, so it feels good over here.
Wow, wow. Okay, and that's where you are running your company Mentorly, is that correct?
Yeah, that's where we're based. I'm Canadian and I spent about a decade after high school working in the US and then I returned to Canada to the other side. So I grew up in Edmonton, moved to the US, and now I'm back in Canada, but in Montreal. So an East Coaster now.
Great. So from what I know, you started out not as a tech founder, but actually as a dancer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So that was my first career. That career you start from a very early age. Normally, your first professional contract is about 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I actually left high school early, finished high school early to go to professional ballet school, and then had about an 11-year career as a touring professional ballerina. And I retired when I was around 30 years old.
Oh, was that very like rigorous? Because yeah, from what I've seen from the movies and stuff, it seems a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
so.
Everyone compares it to like Black Swan. It's not that like conniving, but it is very intense physically. I mean, I trained since I started training professionally at like 11, like at the National Ballet School and Juilliard and others in the summers. But yeah, it's an intense season. You get about 4 months off in the summertime is like off season to recover. But other than that, we toured most of the countries in the world. We were on tour about 6 to 7 months of the year. So it was also on the road a lot. So hotels and different cities and different stages. So that kind of layers on the physical complexity as well as like the actual shows, which you could do upward of 100 shows a year.
Is that something that you just kind of knew as a child that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, I was kind of luckily I was put in a lot of different things like gymnastics and art and dance and athletics, and I just really gravitated towards dance the whole time, and I really wanted to do more and more hours. And then at about 11 years old, I told my mom I want to go to the National Ballet of Canada for the summer in Toronto, and she was like, "Well, what? Who is that?" And I said, "Oh, I saw this pamphlet. It was in my dance school on like the table, and you can go to summer school there, and you fly on a plane alone." And I can imagine now being a mother, like an 11-year-old. That's a lot. But I auditioned and I got in, and so it was like very self driven. My parents are not in the arts, um, and yeah.
Wow. Yeah, what was that like? Was it like as intense as in the movies or anything remotely close to that?
Yeah, it's highly competitive, so there's no draft like in athletics. Like you have to just audition to find a job, sort of like interviewing for a corporate job, but there's no jobs really. Like there's only a position if someone retires or if they leave, let's say they're on maternity leave or something. That's the only way that things sort of open up. So you're auditioning at, dozens of companies, but you don't really know if there's a job. You don't know if it's a female role or a male role. They don't really list it. They just hold these open auditions. They're called cattle calls, which now it's kind of funny, but like cattle kind of lined up at a trough because they just kind of line you up to look at your bodies
Oh my
and your
God.
height and all that stuff. So sometimes you go to a cattle call and then sometimes you take class, and that would be in the equivalent of like a startup community is like a warm intro where you actually go in, someone knows someone,
Mm.
you get allowed to come in and take company ballet class in the morning. Every company has a ballet class, and so you take with them, and then they sort of get to know you and they'll stick around for rehearsals. So it's either that or you go to a cattle call, which is you and just hundreds and hundreds of other people with a number on your chest. And so you're auditioning for all these companies. And then if you're really lucky, like I don't even know what percentage it is. It's like the 1% of the 1% gets their first job. And then from there, it gets easier, obviously, to get other jobs. So my first job was with Ballet British Columbia. That was my first professional contract in Vancouver.
I see. Um, and sort of what made you transition into tech?
Yeah,
Was it just like all of a sudden, or like you consider it for a while?
it's not like a natural transition. But I guess everyone is going to retire in their 30s, maybe 40s, but everyone will mostly retire in their 30s. So I think getting towards my 30s, I sort of thought about like, what is next? I always was sort of on the business side of all these things, if that makes sense. So with one of my companies, I was the board liaison between the board and the artist. So I was understanding like what was our fiscal budget? How many donors do we have right now? Who are they? How do we involve them with the dancers? So I was always learning as I went about the nonprofit and how it went from, $1 million budget to a $3 million budget in 2 years and like what drove that and what are the risks. So I was always like more curious, I would say, than your average artist about what is the financial model
Oh,
behind this. It's not like music. You don't need to know all of that. Like you can just be an artist in the company and do really well. But I was always a little bit curious. So I guess I was curious about how the world worked. And then both of my parents are also entrepreneurs. It's nothing that they've ever told me I should do because it's quite hard. Actually, I
mm.
think my mom said like, maybe you should just get a check. Like it's much easier to
Oh,
receive payday than write payroll, right? But so there was always sort of a looming interest in my brain. And then while I was on tour in my last couple years with my company, I think I was in China on one tour, and I just got like a ton of requests via social media about their next steps in their career, either going from one company to the next or maybe leaving high school and deciding between Juilliard and a non-artistic path, etc. And I just felt like these kids needed and deserved like a deeper conversation, like an actual sit down where we could talk. And it just became this sort of mentorship um, conversations happening, and I found them to be really meaningful. And at the end of my career, I actually found a lot more meaning in teaching and giving back than
mm.
kind of performing because I was injured and it was really painful. And so I just
Oh,
started to think about, you know, if those people had access to the working professionals and they actually had active conversations all the time, they would be so much more informed and they would have so much more support in their career. And so that was sort of the seed of the idea of Mentorly from like the very,
oh,
like deep psychological thing of like, what if everyone had access to really high level mentorship that they could rely
mm.
on that was easy to access. It was not intimidating. And that sort of became like the first seed of an idea for Mentorly. We ended up a little farther in like a B2B SaaS company, but that was like the initial idea.
So it kind of bloomed from like your encounter with the Juilliard students.
Sorry, no, it was just students navigating their next step. Um,
Mm.
not at Juilliard specifically, but like the decision, for example, for a youth to go either, do I want to pursue like a college path like Juilliard? Do I want to go to a company? There's a lot of, information sort of yapping at them. There's their parents probably saying, I'd like you to go to college. There's professional dancers that would probably say you might want to go straight into a company. There's self doubt. Like there's all these things that are not helping them make a decision because they're not informed. And so what I thought is, if we got people that were really in the profession, because a lot of teachers are teaching, but they're not actively in the profession, right? Like design professors are not active designers at Apple or, like they're professors, they're teaching the craft of it, but they're not actually in the industry. And so my insight and what I found to be valuable was how can people have guidance from the people that are actually doing the thing, right?
I
So like
see.
in the arts, it would be they're actually on tour in the companies, they know what's going on in the professional
I see.
world. In entrepreneurship, it would be like me working with another founder that maybe had an IPO and is way above me versus someone that is teaching entrepreneurship. I just think the
Mm.
relationship with the mentor that's actually doing it is going to be much more impactful and realistic to these people. So that's kind of what was coming up for me.
Interesting, interesting. So, what's the story of mentorly after that kind of like seed thought in your head?
Yeah, so we started it as a project. We tapped the artistic community. So we've gone through a major pivot. At the
Oh,
time, the idea was, why don't we have vetted mentors and then people can book one-on-one video calls with them and pay them for their time. So we did initial market research. We sent out like hundreds of surveys. We talked to the broad artistic community. So that was from UX, UI design all the way to ballet, right? It was like just anyone in a creative field we thought to target. It was also the time of like Dribble and all of those startups that were for creatives. And so it was also sort of this like, what else can we build in that space? And everyone gave the same answer. It didn't matter. The mentor didn't need to be in their city. So then we were like, okay, is this a video product? And this was 2017. So it was
okay.
kind of pre hopping on Zoom the whole time, because they wanted to connect with people that were not in their market. Like if I was in Toronto, I wanted to talk to someone in New York. And so we had to build a product to make that happen. So we built an MVP and we launched it, and we had 200
Mhm,
vetted mentors that we like interviewed and
mhm.
screened, and then we launched that. And so by 2018, we had a product sort of running in market.
Okay, so you launched in 2017, and then you had like a product out by 2018.
Yeah, and so at those first times, people were it was a B2C product, right? People from all around the world were sort of booking, having sessions, and we were just listening and learning like what are their needs, how do we scale this really quickly, and then we eventually pivoted in the summer of 2020.
Okay, what was that like defining moment where you realized that you had to pivot?
It was just we couldn't make enough money. So
Oh,
the business model was each session was either $45, $75, or 150, and we were taking 30% of that session. So in a marketplace, you have to have hundreds of thousands of sessions a month to make that work, right? And we just weren't getting there. We were spending a little bit on paid acquisition. We hadn't raised any money, so we didn't really have any resources to like scale a marketplace beyond organic. And we
mhm,
just felt that we were pushing organic for 2 years. We relied a lot on the mentors reach. So if they had a big social following too, that would get us momentum. We actually got some great press and like artsy and very creative fields, but we weren't able to scale it. So we worked at it for 2 years. And what happened was we were sort of exploring all options when you're trying to reach for what is this company? Like if this is not really working and we're making a few $1,000s a month,
mhm.
what's there? I was approaching institutions just to listen to them, like, do your students need this, is there a partnership here, etc. And I actually cold called MIT, the dean. Like you shouldn't cold call a dean, but he's like, you know what, I have someone in creative entrepreneurship, maybe he can help you. And I
Oh,
connected with Sam, and Sam said, I'm actually building a creative entrepreneurship mentorship program on top of a startup competition. We don't need your mentors, but we would actually benefit from your system. Like, can I just have it for MIT for myself?
mm.
And so then I
Oh,
was like, yes, of course, even though we didn't really have a product really to support
oh,
it. So what we
yeah,
did was we made a mentorly portal just for them without the external mentors, but they benefited from booking and all of that kind of thing. And that moment was like, well, how much would you pay for this? Right. And he was like, $1,000. I was like, great. And that was a 1 month for $1,000. The next year of the competition, it was a 6 month contract, but it was $11,000. So there was this sort of
wow,
like, oh, wait, okay, I can see this evolving, that if we had even just 10 or 20 customers at that level, that could be a real business. And
I see.
so we started selling the marketplace, that version of it, that sort of like, this is just your portal, for about 6 months, and people were interested. And so then we decided to raise some money for it, pivot, and then we relaunched in 2020, in the summer of 2020,
I see. And so
a
for
new B solution.
for was it you said MIT?
Yeah, that was our first
Right. So for
enterprise
them,
client.
did you like just tell them that you were gonna provide a product and then go ahead and build it real fast, or what was that like?
Well, we didn't have to really build it. We just created logins that were only for MIT.
I
So
see.
we just had to create a version that was closed off only for them, so they could invite their mentors, they had their mentees, and just use the system, but we didn't provide the mentors. And in a lot of ways, like that simplifies our life, right? Like we don't have to vet people, we don't need to worry about that like human capital side. All of that risk is on
Mm.
their end. We're just
So
facilitating these conversations.
so what did you guys provide them? what did the portal have?
So at that time, it was really, like basic. It was like booking, calendar links, video call, rebooking, things like that. So people could have access to everyone in the program. But at that time, it was like a really MVP version of what the product is now. So there was no program manager site. There was no management. There was no communications tools. There was no reporting, analytics, all that kind of stuff. But what we did is we sort of just hacked it is we had all that data on our back end, right? And they had the front end. So what we did at the end of the competition, because it was just a small contract, is we just took all that data and provided a report. So we like designed it and just like emailed them a PDF of like, this is what happened in your program. And he was like, oh, this is so much more insight than we'd ever get before. Nobody even answers the surveys, but now I know exactly who was booking with whom and trends, etc. And so that was almost that PDF was almost okay. Why don't we productize this and put it in the product as
Mm.
reporting? So it was like the first stage of what we would eventually build for Mentorly.
Did MIT like stay on as a customer after that?
Yeah, they stayed on for 4 years, I think, and then we actually
Oh,
followed
nice.
Sam. He took that program to Harvard, and we followed him there.
Very
Um,
nice.
yeah,
Very nice. Um, so yeah, like, you know, um, I'm kind of curious, like because you shifted from like a B2C product, from a B2C product to a B2B, like when you first had that like aha moment with MIT, did you completely shift or were you still kind of like, how
yeah.
did you
So
decide to completely,
yeah, we relaunched it. We called it Mentorly Enterprise. And we sort of did this announcement that,
Mm,
this is this product, and then the marketplace sort of still exists. So we just didn't want to invest any more time or attention to the marketplace, just kind of let it be, but then pivoted all of our focus to enterprise. And that pivot for me personally was like pretty intense. I'd never done an enterprise sales cycle. I didn't have skills in that area. Like I had the soft skills of sales, but I didn't know anything about demo flows and HubSpot and different deal stages and anything. So I had to do like a really fast re-education as well. So like after 6 p.m., I would spend 6 to 9 just doing like general
mhm.
B2B SaaS education of the sales process because I was going to be leading that go to market. Um,
So is that Mentorly like the product that you had for MIT? Is it Mentorly as we know it now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a much better product. We scrapped most
Mm,
of the interface. It's a full redesign. Like it doesn't look and feel much like it. But Mentorly today is a program manager portal full of a suite of tools to help them run their program the best as possible with the better outcomes and the most insight. So they have, a hosted system. They can fully design it and adapt it to their branding from the back end. They have member management, intelligent matching, all of those kind of things, reporting that they need. And then it's also the end use case with the mentors, mentees, where they have booking, insights, all that sort of stuff. So it's a full suite solution. At that time, it was sort of like bare bones.
mm.
And we've built on that since then and launched products that, our customers have told us that they wanted.
So the clients are the ones that provide the mentors, correct?
Yeah. So today it's an enterprise SaaS. So basically, the client is paying for a subscription for
Mm,
Mentorly, and then they invite everyone that needs to be involved, both mentors and mentees. You know, Clients can range from a large company, like a large public company, to an entrepreneurship, startup, community, like a nonprofit. They can range because the system can be changed and adjusted to your needs of your program. Like your each individual at the company now is just, I don't know if you've experienced it, but even coding, like people using cursor and voice to text and things like that, like our capacity is just way better, right? Like, so a team of 3 or 4 CS people can now be honestly one because you can automate even with tools like intercom, like even their internal AI our like our bots and things, they can take most tickets and answer questions and lead them to the help center. And so a human has to step in maybe if they want to talk to a human, but before that they don't have
mm.
to. So
Right,
actually
right.
my goal is to grow the company as big as possible with as small as team as
I
possible.
see.
But I think the revenue per head should be like the focus of how much revenue can you make per employee.
So, Do you have another co-founder on board with you who manages all of the AI? Yeah.
Yeah, we have technical co-founder and developers, and I'm more go-to-market, so sales,
Gotcha, gotcha,
marketing, and managed CS.
gotcha. Like,
Yeah.
is it more work for you, like overseeing like just the use of AI agents or anything like that for your
Uh,
employees?
what do you mean, like the internal use of them? I mean, some are
Um,
in products, like some are in the products that we buy, and then otherwise, like I really expect them to be using AI for every part of their
I see.
role. I
I
think
see.
for copy and things that are artistic and writing, it needs to be human still. Like I think you can do baseline writing, but you can also smell it. Like I don't know if you've
I
seen
see.
all the marketing on LinkedIn. Like if it's AI written, you know exactly that it like they just put that into ChatGPT and got it out. I think like our brand feeling and how we talk to our customers is unique.
Mm,
Should writers spend 90% of the time without AI and then pump out one piece where we could be pumping out 10? No. So it's a balance. I think like titles, crafting the story, etc. can be done by human, but then like editing, like I used to spend so much time just like going through
right.
writing, making sure there was no mistakes. Like that's just not needed anymore. So the velocity is, yeah, it's super exciting. I don't know how you feel about
Okay.
using AI in your day to day.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm like I for one struggle a lot with like content. So I thought that when I used ChatGPT, the content was so good, but maybe I need to reevaluate or something.
No, it's good. I mean, it can really like get it out. You mean written content?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, totally. No, it can pump out some good stuff. I think just the nuance and like wording and phrasing and hooks and things like that can still be done by humans. I'm sure we're not far away from that, but I can sometimes smell the AI content on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like that person anymore, you know?
where are you guys active on? I think you guys are on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah,
What other channels?
LinkedIn is a big channel for us. I would say LinkedIn is our primary channel, especially because we do product launches, try to do insights, and put our blog out there. We are
Mm,
experimenting on like different short videos just to understand like where are these people living, because I think you can get to your ICP on LinkedIn while they're in work mode, but we remember that people are still on TikTok when they're scrolling at night. They could be in HR, they could be building a
right.
program. And if you're talking about something that's relevant, maybe that's an area to do sort of less curated content. I
Mm,
think our issue is just focusing on the channels that work, though, rather than not distracting ourselves. I think that's a balance that all marketing are kind of trying to figure out right now. And then attribution, right? Because like a lot of our people come in and they just say, "Oh, we just found you on Google," but we know that that person has probably been hit like 3 or 4 times, either by LinkedIn and someone mentioned it, and then they saw us on like TikTok. They think they find us on Google because that's when they finally put in mentorship software or Mentorly. So, and even our attribution will say Google. So I think attribution is continually challenging.
yeah. How actively do you just expect every employee to, use AI tools? Or how do you
For
spend
their
time
own
like
individual work.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I have conversations with the teams about it. Like you can tell the developers that are really excited about Cursor and kind of learning with each model that's released in Claude. Um, with CS, I would say that we rely on it mostly in tool for like insights in the major CS tools we're using. So whether that's like right now we're using Intercom and Vitally, but I think I want to get off of Intercom because there's some other options. Um,
Okay.
and then in marketing, yeah, I actually expect everyone to use at least a basic AI like ChatGPT for all levels of their work so that it's super polished and the thoughts are organized. And then for the actual work, then you have to sort of decipher, is this something that is better from me, or can I rely on it? I think it's a dance between the two the whole time.
Mm, got you, got you. What are your goals at the moment, and what are some of the challenges that you face, short
Yeah,
term
I
and
think
long?
continually just to grow the company and hit our revenue milestones. I think layering on AI is really interesting to us right now. We're sort of going through our user journey to understand where it's really helpful. I think the conversation in product right now is not to just kind of slap it on, especially like that chat interface that everyone's doing.
Yeah.
We're exploring voice, we're exploring, guided things for mentors or mentees. So it's just understanding where will this be helpful? And sometimes you just have to launch it and see if it's helpful or not. But there's really exciting things that you can build way faster than before, like
Mm.
from 100 days down to a day. Like it's condensing a lot. So continually to explore in product and then just grow our customer base. There's just enormous opportunity to grow our ICP, like in large company programs, both new companies, like net new logos, but also within those companies to see what other learning programs do they want to add on? Can we be useful in other areas of the company? Can we be stickier because we're part of onboarding and learning and development? So how do we like thread? Obviously, like the biggest goal for enterprise sales is to thread into the business more. So there's a lot of upselling and threading right now, and then also like net new logos acquisition.
What do you mean by threading exactly?
Threading in a sales process is more getting more people involved in the conversation so that has less chance to fall off or not close. So if I'm talking to like the program manager, I need to also understand that her boss is approving this budget, who is maybe director of, learning and development. Okay, if this program succeeds, like what is the real outcome from it? Can the CEO know about that? How do we get that up to them? So that's like a threading of the knowledge of the product within the company. Because in the last market cycle, like the 2021, 2022, 2023, you probably saw like SaaS was being cut from a lot of major companies. And what we found was like if the team was not aware of it above the learning and development team, even if it was impactful, they can just
Mm.
eliminate that budget without even asking. Like they can just cut that team. We'd have like a churn customer and we were like, oh, why, can we dive into why this churned? And they're like, oh, that whole team is eliminated. And we were like, oh,
Oh.
that means we weren't as important as we wanted to be, right? Like we needed to be threaded into the organization better, both from like a maybe usage standpoint, but then also from an awareness standpoint. So you want to become like indispensable when those budgets decisions are being made.
Got you, got you. So yeah, what are some of like what has your journey been like as a woman founder?
Um, I mean, it's been a ride because we pivoted. Like, it feels like we reinvented the company a few years ago, right? So it was like company and market, learned a bunch of that market and how marketplaces interact and all that stuff, and then pivot and then kind of go that way. I would say specifically as a woman, I guess I would talk to like being a mom. I gave birth this summer, so I have an
Mm.
8 month old. So that's like a
Oh,
unique experience. Yeah. So physically, that was super challenging for me. Like, operating a startup in pregnancy for me, some people have great pregnancies. I was sick every day, threw up every day. So yeah. So I would say like the physical challenge of that was a challenge that I recently overcame and sort of understanding where I can protect my energy and then how can I work and still be healthy
were
for my
you
daughter.
working through pregnancy?
Yeah, I was. I actually took maternity leave early. My doctor said I had to. It's interesting because if the baby's like upside down, they call that breech, right? And she needed to turn. And my doctor told me like as soon as women stop working, oftentimes the baby will automatically turn to the right way. Something in your nervous system just like calms down and everything kind of settles. So it was
Is it
actually nice.
is it dangerous if the baby is upside down?
No, you just give birth in different ways.
Oh, I see.
But they'd want, and so it was just interesting to hear like we'd like you to stop working like 2 weeks early, and it was actually good because it was a definite. I could say to my team like, okay, guys, I'm starting mat leave now. It's doctor's orders, which was probably stronger impetus to me than me saying it because it's really hard because you're just typing. You think it's not that stressful. You're just typing. But it is like it's your whole mind and your brain and your focus. And so that was one thing that I navigated this year that I'm proud to get through.
Oh, how is the baby
She's
doing?
great. Yeah, she's 8 months
Oh,
old and yeah, doing amazing.
and how like when did you come back from maternity leave?
Yeah, so I'm in Canada. So generally, kind of the laws here are uh, maternity leave and paternity leave, or parental leave as we call it, is included in sort of like your unemployment. So you pay into it and then you receive it from the government. So your private company doesn't need to pay anything,
Oh, that's an
and you can
interesting
get,
model.
yeah. So it's pretty common that women take up to a year. They can take up to 18 months of your job being protected, but it's paid. But all of those weeks are shareable. So my family's unique. I'm a founder. My husband has a very stable job. That's a good combination, is like one's a
Right.
founder, one has a very stable job. So he actually took the majority of our parental leave. So I took 3.5 months and he took, 5 plus. So we're just unique. Like we split it up that way. I'm really lucky to live in Canada and have really great support, and my employees too. All of my employees, like most of them, take the full year paid. The startup doesn't have to pay anything, and they're off, and their job is protected. And then when they come back, they're here. So
That sounds like a
really lucky.
great system. Is it like
Yeah,
is
it's
it
been
part of
great.
the tax?
You pay into it just like you would pay into unemployment. So part of when you kind of pay your tax to the government off your paycheck, a small portion also goes to that. And so it's the same as unemployment, family leave, etc., so that we can pay people. So
So you took three months of maternity leave,
yeah.
mat leave? That's crazy. Um,
Do you think it's crazy short or long?
that's crazy short.
Well, yes, yeah, exactly. A lot of Canadians would agree with that because a lot of women take the year. But I think like you just have a responsibility as a founder. You're fiscally responsible. You want to check in. I'm not saying I was full time. My brain was quite. It's interesting because your brain just changes. Like
Oh
there's
wow.
so many different hormones, etc. So that first month back was just sort of like getting into it. Was it 4 months? See, I can't even remember because it was the summer as well. So summers they're more quiet in SaaS. So I think it was 4 months actually. But I think there's just the ability to understand, like, I did a lot of work to help my team ramp up to that point so that they could just work without me, like no calls, no texts
I
for at least
see.
two
I
months.
see. Wow.
And then I think it's your responsibility to take care of yourself. I know founder friends in the US that took weeks. So I was lucky. But you want to, yeah. I think when you're leading a company, it's just a different experience. And then I'm just really lucky that, my partner could take that, and we could be a team on that. Mhm.
Wow. I'm just mind blown right now.
You know what? It's
Yeah.
unique because I think a lot of people talk about, like, women in startups and funding and stuff like that. But this is one of the things that's actually different between men and women when you're leading, is like the parental experience is different. And I have actually gotten a few founder friends at an event. They were like, "Can you have dinner with us?" I was like, "Why?" Because they're all just killing it in their startups. And they're like, "We're just considering, like, what are we going to do for kids?" Like, we're intimidated because it's an intimidating thought of like, okay, I'm leading a startup, but I also want a family, and I know that means time away, but I can't have time away. What did you do? And when I was navigating it, I was going through the mat leave, just like calculating weeks and the whole thing. And I reached out to a few friends in Quebec and I said, like, I need to talk to someone that owns their business because it's a unique thing, owns their business and took maternity leave. And there was like 4 or 5 people who were like, oh yeah, I have someone, but they're in BC. And I was like, no, it's not the same system. Okay, I have
Yeah.
someone, but they were the first employee, but not the founder. I'm like, but their husband was the founder. Yes. I'm like, that's not the same. I need to talk to some. And I couldn't find anyone. I couldn't find one woman that had done that in tech. I'm sure there's so many business owners that have done it, but it was such like a light bulb of like, oh man, okay, well, if people who are thinking about this journey, I have to have dinner with them and like walk them through what I did because I was quite confused. Um,
Wow.
so that was like one thing that was unique this year.
Wow. Was it stressful, like preparing for your maternity leave, even
It
though
was
it was
kind of
only like
nice. It was like, how does a team operate? What
yeah.
do I really need to be involved in? What can I just give them oversight? You really like level up all your documentation. Like
I
if
see.
this, then this. We also had like a crisis sort of pyramid. It was like, if this happens and you need, like, let's say financial login information, text me. If this happens, but I'm in the hospital, text this investor. I had an investor that said, I'm going to be the point of contact for anything
Oh, wow.
investor related or like emergency. So they had his phone number. Obviously, they could text me, but I did tell them, like, you know, I'm not going to be on Slack.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, it wasn't stressful, but it was a really nice exercise to say, I'm going to be off. Here
Hmm.
is what you need to know. And we did a lot of like, trial things where a team member would take a meeting that they wouldn't normally make, and then they would record it, and I would give coaching on it, but months in advance, so that by the time that I was away, it was fine. I did have one team member, though. I lost a team member, stepped away from the company. It was actually due to this weird visa reason in Europe, like a month before, and he was the head of CS, and that's like a really big role. And I remember being 8 months pregnant and sweating. It was so hot in Montreal. And I was like, okay, everything is all set. I'm going to step away. And then this happened. And I was like, oh my God, I have no one in CS. Like, what am I going to do? So it was like a really fast recruiting to get the right person. Gabrielle, she's on the team now. She's amazing. But, you can prepare. And then this thing happens right before you're out to give birth. So
Oh, wow.
stuff happens. Yeah.
So are both you and your husband Canadian?
Sorry.
Are both you and your husband Canadian?
Canadian? Yeah.
Okay. And like I have to ask, like, as a founder, as a woman founder with a baby, do you get enough sleep? What is your
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I was up at 6 this morning, but my husband and I change on that morning shift. So sometimes I don't need to take it and I'll be sleeping till 8. I'm lucky
sleeping?
she's a really good sleeper, but the
Oh,
first four
okay.
months she was not. They eat every 3 hours at night, but now she's sleeping through the night. So she's sleeping from 6:30 to 6:30. Don't say it
Wow.
out loud because it probably won't happen tomorrow, but yeah, it's awesome. You do have to, though, take like exceptional care of yourself. Like you have to, all of those things that you know that you need, like if you feel like you're crashing and you need to like meditate or go for a walk or have a shower quickly in the afternoon, like you just really have to tune in because postpartum is very intense on your body. So my background as an athlete, I think it is now
Mm.
carrying over to like take that as seriously as possible because the stress of a business and the stress of motherhood is can really add up.
So you like jumped almost directly from dancing ballet to being a tech founder, yes?
It actually overlapped. So we
Right, right.
launched Mentorly, and I was still on tour for a year because we have professional contracts like athletes. Like you can't just get out of them because you're sold, like the show is sold with you in it. So the first year I was still touring, and I didn't step away till spring of 2018. So yeah, I just kind of overlapped.
I see. Yeah, I just had to ask that sleeping question because I definitely need like I'm very big on sleep and I don't function
Me
too
too.
well when I sleep less than like 8 or 9 hours.
Me too. I no, I as an athlete like you, we had instructions when we'd get to a city on tour. It would be like Rome, and they're like, no going to the Coliseum. You're sleeping all day. Like sleep is an active part of recovery. So I agree. I'm with you.
And what stage is Mentorly in currently
I think
as
we're
far
in
as
an
like
exciting
revenue?
stage right now because it's sort of like I think the last 2 years of the market got us to really focus. We hit profitability a year and a half ago, and that was sort of like a big exhale, right? When you're making more money than you're burning. Yeah, yes. Even if it's a dollar, you're like, a dollar. But it meant that we could operate without investor permission. That was like the big thing, right? You're not bound to any rounds or, you don't need to raise again if you don't want to specifically. And I honestly, it feels like a trend because I've talked to a lot of founders in this last year and they've all said like the goal is to get to profitability. I think the lack of capital in the market in the last 2 years helped people make that decision like quite quickly out of necessity, but we did that. And so that feels good because now we can either turn up the levers of growth or turn the back to like be more profitable. Um, but it's evaluating how can you sustainably grow, and then where do you want to spend money to grow faster.
Hmm. What what's like stage funding are you guys at?
We've just raised seed, so we've raised like $1 million of angel investment, and that's all we've raised.
Seed.
Mhm.
Okay, I thought you said seed. Okay, okay.
No,
That's
not seed.
okay.
No, seed. SEED. Exactly.
Got you.
So angels. I think we had a scout check from a fund, but mostly
Mm,
angels. One or two really small funds, and then hit profitability. So
yeah, and you mentioned before that you've always been in Canada.
yeah, yeah. I when we founded the company was here. We've had employees. We use Deal, which is like big in the news right
Yeah,
now, to
yeah.
employ a few people overseas. Um, we've done that, but mostly we've had Canadian team members.
Nice, nice. Do you guys do like remote or only or hybrid or?
Yeah, right now we're fully remote. I do meet with a few developers like once a week. It's actually energizing for me to work in person, more of a
Mm,
like how can we get the energy going and
mm,
um but all remote, which allows for a lot of flexibility. For example, our person in CS was like, I would love to live in London. I've always wanted to live in London. And Canada and the UK have a visa that under a certain age you can just go for 2 years. And I was like, great, go
mm,
to London. Like, there's
mm,
no reason you can be here. And so she's building her life and living her dream there and still working for us. And it was so helpful because we really wanted to retain her. And if we were in person, we would lose her. So we've been remote since the pandemic. I remember that day in 2020, we were in a co-working space. I think there was four of us, and I just remember saying, like, "Okay, see you in a few weeks." And then it was just like a ride that we couldn't plan for. So we've stayed remote.
and you said what percentage of your team is in Canada and where are the rest?
About 80% are here.
Oh, okay, okay. I was gonna ask you whether you do location-based pay or
Well, that's a
but
good question. We don't.
yeah.
No, we just do pay. I get that with the you know the change to like pounds or other currencies that changes, but we don't. No. What have you seen? Have you seen a lot of startups do location-based pay?
I'm not sure, but I think I've seen a good mix of both. Yeah. For example, like my boyfriend works for a nonprofit. He's in tech as well, and he does location-based pay. So
Okay. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that makes sense. I think it's like a big burden administratively if you're like as a startup, do you want to calculate if they're in let's say Tennessee versus California for sure. I think our goal is just that people do their best work and they're paid fairly. We have a lot of commission, like our sales have great commission structures. Even CS has some commission. So I want to have people incentivized. Um, but what's interesting is like the Canadian US dollar is really low right now. So that's interesting in terms of like when we get paid in American, it's amazing because it's 1.4 almost.
Mm,
But when we pay bills in American, it's horrible because it's
yeah,
1.4
yeah.
the bill, right? So that's been interesting lately.
No, I'm located in Korea, and it's really bad right now here too.
The
The
dollar.
Korean won.
Okay.
It used to be like almost like 1100 or 1,000 or 1,1100 won per dollar. Now it's 1400.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
very,
Yeah.
very bad.
We're all feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like yeah, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you would like give as an advice or any you know, learnings that you would like to share with our viewers?
Honestly, if you're building a startup, I would just say keep going. Like, I think those that live and don't die, like the businesses that don't die, ultimately succeed. I think the journey has been a lot of interpersonal work with myself,
Mm,
like going through challenges and setbacks and times of low confidence or the product isn't ready is like that is always going to happen. Like I thought that would go away when we got our 10th customer or 20th customer or our first big launch and then our second big. It's like there's always bugs and it's
mm,
never quite perfect. That's what software is. It's malleable, it breaks. And so just that is the work. And so if I could be like kinder to myself in the past, I would tell myself that like this will happen again. And like what you have to work on is how you approach it, like maybe how you problem solve it, how fast do you rally the right team together, how fast can you get the right information to the customer. That will change, that will improve, but things will happen. You obviously want to mitigate them, but I think that is the journey of the startup, and that's why it's so interesting. It just keeps happening.
And where do you get your motivation, or when things are kind of like, not so shiny with you?
When things are not shiny, that's a good
Yeah.
that's a good analogy. I think like I have a willingness to succeed in something because I know it's possible. I'm not sure if it's like more or less than other people, but in my dance career, it was very clear that like there was no real reason why I would be successful. I wasn't more gifted, if not like, I just wanted to make it happen. I was almost really scared of failure. So I don't want to operate from a place of fear, but I think that like within ourselves, everyone has huge potential. And I don't think we're even close to fulfilling it. I know I'm not, because I know that I could adjust like this habit and be that much better. And so I think it's like an inherent kind of drive, but then also like the impact we're having is pretty enormous. Like when I see people getting mentored by people that they've admired or leaving feedback that they helped tremendously in their own business or in their own path, I know that as we talked about with AI, all the answers are going to get even closer to our fingertips. But the lacking thing is like these connections, is like being seen, being understood, being listened to, looking someone in the eye, like my investors and my mentors say, like, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about a time in my career when it was, and I just all of a sudden feel, oh gosh, I can continue. So understanding that, like, how important that mentorship relationship is to me, and then looking at the numbers on the platform and saying like 17,000 sessions, like really reminding myself that that human interaction is happening with every one of those numbers. It's not just like a ticker that's going up. It's like that is an exchange and someone hopefully feeling better. So I think that is ultimately what drives me, is our ability to reach people and make impact.
Great. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining us, Ashley.
My
And really
pleasure.
quickly, yeah, can you tell everyone where you can be found or reached?
Sure. Yeah. So personally, I think LinkedIn, Twitter is a great place to find me on more of the business side. And then Mentorly, definitely LinkedIn is our main channel. You can find us at mentorly.com on the internet, and on LinkedIn at Mentorly. So we're excited to meet anyone that's building mentorship programs, either in their companies, maybe you're an HR leader, learning and development, or in a network, nonprofit, or professional business organization. So excited to reach you. And thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Great. All right. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks. Bye.